is Jess and this is Vox Populi. Today I'm honoured to be joined by Billy Howarth, who is the founder of Parents Against Grooming. Billy, would you be able to tell us a bit about yourself, how you started this and what was the inspiration behind that?
Of course, so I am a father first and foremost. It was an attempt to groom my child. Obviously I was well up on the internet and stuff like that. I managed to get onto what was going on and I managed to stop it.
Can you go into detail about how they did that?
Yeah, it was via social media, asking my 12-year-old daughter to come and meet certain men at a certain time, but I had access to her, so it never really got through to my daughter because I intercepted it. But not hundreds of children in Rochdale wasn't that lucky. So I managed to get on top of my daughters. I chased it down, I worked on it, I watched, and then I reported. And in doing so was when I met other parents like myself who was going through the same issues, whose daughters was going missing, whose daughters weren't coming home, turning up with new phones, turning up hungover, turning up with drugs in the pockets, so on, things, all the signs you see when grooming gangs are involved. So I kind of built a little base of people then, and it's gone from there. Of course, we've also been campaigning of No Abuse School, which is another Rochdale child abuse scandal where the abuse was perpetrated by Cyril Smith.
What's that about, sorry?
So there's a school in Rochdale back in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s that was used for what in that day was called naughty boys. Today we would call them ADHD, autism, and kids that can't work in mainstream school, where they can't process themselves in mainstream schooling, so they get put into what we know now today as a special needs school. Back then there was a naughty boys school, and we had one here in Rochdale where it was its prolific abuse the boys that was in the school from the 60s to the 90s till it was closed down. There's been a national inquiry into that, the No View inquiry. The same people we're talking about now are the same people who were involved back then.
So, what have you found in Rochdale in terms of this mass grooming epidemic? Is it very prominent? How do parents reach out to you about this?
So a lot of it's social media, but we've got a hub on Yorkshire Street. A lot of people come through the door, but most of it is through social media, and it's not just Rochdale now. We're nationwide. We've been working all across the country. Our main thing is survivor support, but we don't mind getting our feet dirty. We have to walk the streets to protect children. It's something we've done here in Rochdale, and it's something we've done elsewhere as well. The aim of what we're trying to do is accountability to stop this from ever happening again, because if the authorities have acted in the way they should have acted then, it wouldn't be happening again still now, which it is. At this moment in time, as me and you speak, Operation Lytton has 58 paedophiles on bail in Rochdale today.
Why do you think this is such a big issue?
I know why. It initially started, I'm going to give it you plain and simple. It starts with Gordon Brown and Jackie Smith, who at the time was the Labour Prime Minister. He signed an executive order for these girls' chaotic lifestyles with a reason for their own abuse. That then got passed down to the head of Crime Prosecution Services, who was one of Keir Starmer. And then that got passed down to Peter Fahey and Tony Lloyd, who was people powers that be in Rochdale. And on the back of that, the Rochdale case was ignored, but not only that, children around the whole UK was then abused on the back of this order, and cases were shut down all around the UK on the back of this order. For me, the man's guilty, all three of them need to be put in the dock. So that's my fight, a fight for accountability, but the biggest thing we do is support survivors and give them the voice, because they've never had it before. So that's what I've always tried to empower others to be able to speak.
Why do you think this has only come about over the past few decades? What's caused this mass grooming epidemic?
Unwillingness to... So Rochdale is a red wall. It's a Labour wall. It's hard to explain, but it's all for votes. That's why it was allowed to continue here. And we've seen a recent interview by the former MP, Simon Danshut, saying Tony Lloyd instructed him not to speak up about the grooming gangs because it would be negative impacts on voting. And that's exactly why it was done. Children were allowed to be abused because it was better for votes.
But who wouldn't vote? Who would vote in favour of this when, there is children getting hurt? What kind of people do that?
Now it's tricky because I don't want to go into the racial, because for me, there's paedophiles in all cultures. But here in Rochdale, we had a really bad problem with Pakistani grooming gangs, as did other places in the country. And the council, I don't blame the Asian community, I blame the council, because if they'd have done what they were supposed to do, it'd have been stopped. But when they was given 10 years, 20 years of being allowed to carry on, it became culture to them. And it's also a culture to the council. The only ones on the outside are us who are saying this isn't culture. But we've tried and tried. I've studied by-elections, I've studied general elections, I've studied council elections. This red wall will not fall in Rochdale. Maybe this is now when it will.
I currently live in London at the moment, and it's honestly shocking to see that people from London are completely oblivious to this issue, because originally I'm from Manchester, from Bolton. Right. So like obviously that is like a mainstream thing around there.
It is a UK problem. It's not a Rochdale problem. It's a UK-wide problem. The only thing is we've managed to put the pieces together in Rochdale, and we know who's responsible in Rochdale. So obviously when you start looking at it, you start inserting that to around the country, same people. Same head of crime prosecution service, same Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, and Jackie Smith, the butcher of a rat.
It's just crazy to me how some people can be completely oblivious to this. Do you think in Rochdale there is a culture where everyone wants to keep quiet, or are people vocal and active about this issue?
You have sets of people, so you obviously got the community who's not allowed to say anything because they're afraid of backlash from their own community. Then you've got the elderly who haven't, and in Rochdale I've seen it so many times where it's, things like happened back in them days and it's move on, do you know what I mean? The old version of calm down, carry on. It's the younger generation, 50s below, that are starting to say, hang on a minute, you know. This town is known for a long time. I've been shouting this for 20 years all over the time, done mass protests in the town so many times, you know, so the town knows full well of what's gone on. But like I said, well, people in London, not so much, but it's time we told them, isn't it?
How prominent is this issue? Like, how many survivors are coming forward, and how many victims come forward?
So, as I've just told you, as we're going now, Operation Lytton is now running still, and there's 58 paedophiles on bail in Rochdale today. So that shows you just how much that is still a massive problem around the UK. But until those are in the positions to do something about it, I keep deciding not to do anything about it. And when they make these failures like Rochdale Council did and like Great Manchester Police did, the mayors and police and crime commissioners like Andy Burnham giving them a pass saying we're not going to punish them for the failures, then these failures will continue. Until we have top-down reform of children's services and how we protect our children, until we have convicted men who are from other countries coming into the UK abusing our children, still here, not being sent back after they've lost 2 appeals, and they're still here, it's going to continue. Until we get tough and we start putting paedophiles in jail instead of watching them walk out of court every day, it's going to continue. Until we toughen up as a society and say the abuse of children is unacceptable right across the board, if you touch a child, you're getting 20 years in jail, it will continue.
I understand you have to be quite confidential about these matters, but I think it would be quite beneficial for those who aren't aware about this issue, who have closed their eyes to this issue, to know how prominent it is and how extreme it is. Do you have any stories of young girls who have been groomed?
Yes, I do. Obviously, I'm not going to name, but I've heard the stories of being handcuffed to radiators, tied to radiators, cable tied to radiators, whipped with kettle leads, force-fed bleach, mass abused, trafficked. You know, I could go on and on and on. All the horrific things that should never happen to a child is happening to a child, and it's not just happening once. There's someone else waiting behind the door, then somebody else behind the door, somebody else behind the door. So it's once, twice, 2, 3, 4 times, a day, a week, a month. Never ending for these kids. And the only solace to get is justice when they finally. Because I just want to make it clear, I've still seen the rhetoric today. Lifestyle choices. A person under the ages of 16 cannot consent to sexual intercourse either digitally or in person. So there is no such thing as a chaotic lifestyle for a child. It doesn't exist. These children are children and they was abused, and there's no such thing as child prostitution, which is a word that keeps getting used. There's no such thing, it's child abuse. That is it, end of story, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand you don't want to go into the racial element of it, but one of the excuses of silencing a lot of these girls is the fact that they don't want to heighten community tensions. How would you respond to that?
Absolutely. The reason why Tony Lloyd sent his messages out around Rochdale is we do not want to affect a negative effect on the vote. Wasn't community tensions, Rochdale's had its problems in its past, but to kind of turn it 6 and works together now, we all get on. However, things like this do have a tend to make a bit of a split. The Labour Party have took anyone who spoke out against this is far right. That doesn't wash anymore. Thanks to the Workers' Party, I've got to be honest, the Workers' Party have come in and have said, no, this is wrong, you can't accuse these people of being racist when they're talking about the abuse of children, and they've got the facts to back it up. You know, I've been in this 20 years, I could tell you the ICSA report of No View at Cambridge House, the GMCA report part 1, which is refers to Operation Augusta, the GMCA report part 2, which refers to Operation Span, the Ancoffrey report, the Mellor report was all about the abuse in Rochdale, about that council and that police force covering up the abuse of our children. Why has no one to this day been held to account? It'll continue until we hold these people to account, and that's where it's got to go.
Are you optimistic about the future?
I am now, I wasn't last week. Last week I felt I was banging my head against a brick wall, but thanks to Elon Musk, love him or love him, you know, like him or not, he's done me a big favour. But he's not the first one to do it. There's other people who've been speaking about this as well, who just don't have a platform as big as this, you know what I mean? So there's other people who I've been speaking it for 20 years. Just got to keep going, got to keep pushing. The end game for me is accountability of those who failed, and reform of it never happening again.